Our aim in this course is to understand how our economic system works. This requires understanding the motivations that lie behind human economic behavior. And that is the topic of my comments today. One view of economic motivations is represented by the quote that you can see on the screen, that it's human nature to want to get the maximum possible amount of material wealth for oneself. That view is known as Homo economicus, a Latin phrase that translates into economic man. However, many people who study human motivations argue that there's actually a range. There's not just one. One is indeed individual self-interest, but people are also motivated by altruism, by reciprocity, and by group interest. Let me briefly explain each of these. An altruistic act is one that is undertaken by one person for the purpose of benefiting someone else, something that people often do. If someone takes care of their grandmother for a few hours on a Sunday, that's an example of an altruistic act, assuming it's not being done in the hopes of getting an inheritance. Reciprocity is a somewhat different kind of motivation. Reciprocity occurs when someone does something for another person in the expectation that at some point, perhaps not immediately, that person will do a service of more or less equal value in the future for oneself. Gift giving at birthdays and holidays is a classic example of the reciprocity motive, which seems to play a big role in human society. The last one that I'll mention is group interest, which is based on group identity. This is a motive in which someone does something in the economy because of the belief that one is part of a group and that one wants to advance the interests of that group. The we action. There are many different group identities that people have. People identify as part of a nation, part of an economic class, an occupation for adults who work, a residence occupation based on city or town or state. People have identities of race, of gender, of religion. A group identity can be informal, such as economic class, or formal, such as an organization, a school, a company, a labor union. People sometimes act based on their desire to advance the interests of such a group. For example, if people belong to a labor union, they may take actions that they believe will advance the interests of the labor union. Now, with these different possible motivations relevant to the economy, how can you study which is important and which is unimportant? Well, there are three basic ways. One is to do experiments, and economists, as well as people, specialists in other fields, have done experiments in economics. It's called experimental economics, in which a bunch of people are brought into a room and the researcher asks them to play a game with certain rules, and the aim is to learn what their motivations are in making economic decisions. You'll see more about that in some of the other course resources. A second approach is anthropological research. This is the study of small-scale human societies that exist today around the margins of major societies and that have existed in the past that can be studied. And often by studying such small-scale societies, which vary quite a bit in the way in which people behave toward each other in economic decision-making, you can make inferences, you can draw conclusions about what is motivating people. Is it self-interest? Is it altruism, reciprocity, or group interest? Third is evolutionary analysis, which is a method that involves studying how human beings evolved, taking account of the physical characteristics that we have, our strength, our range of skills, our mental ability to comprehend things, and to reason about what are the possible kinds of motivations that would enable such a species as ourselves to survive and reproduce over time. Could we do that if we just follow individual self-interest? Does it require the other three motivations? Now, the results of this research that you will see in the readings for this course find that altruism, reciprocity, and group interest play major roles in economic motivation. Individual self-interest plays some role, but it is not at all the whole story. Group interest is of particular importance for the political economy approach because, as I mentioned in the previous lecture, political economy approach treats not just individuals but groups as actors, groups such as workers, employers, and so forth. And the finding of the research that group interest plays an important role in motivating people in their economic actions helps to justify the political economy approach. Now, it's important to take account of the way in which motivations develop in people. And individuals' motivations are not just a result of something inborn. It is strongly affected by economic institutions, by what people experience and learn when they buy things, when they work on jobs. In the political economy view, the relative importance of these different economic motivations is both to a significant extent learned by the interactions with economic institutions such as companies, stores, etc. And such learning is transmitted across generations by the socialization process of the society. Consider the contemporary economy that we all live in. Capitalism, contemporary capitalism. Human beings have a powerful need to gain social approval. There is enormous evidence for this. For a capitalist economy to work, individuals must act in a materially acquisitive manner, as we will see in a later section of this course. The mechanism in our contemporary society for promoting material self-interest is that those who act in that way often get the greatest social approval. If someone is successful in acquiring material goods, if you become rich, that tends to gain social approval. However, capitalism is a complicated system, and it requires not just individual self-interest, but also cooperation. Decisions are often made in groups in a capitalist economy, and for that to work smoothly, people have to cooperate. They can't just compete over whose opinion will rule. They have to take account of each other's knowledge and views. Now, there are implications of the points I've made for our consideration of possible changes in our economic system. Future economic systems might take advantage of the human drive for social approval to get a different mixture of motivations from what we see in contemporary society. History shows that human economic systems and the associated economic motivations and behaviors can vary quite a bit over time and from place to place. There is no reason to assume that further variation in economic motivations and institutional arrangements does not lie in our future. No obstacle to that from human nature. Thank you.